Democratic strategist Tony Cani makes his return to the war room. Tony, how are you?
I'm good.
We've got our buddy Luis Acosta, DACA recipient, partner at Oracle Strategies. You work with both political parties. Great to see you, man. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me.
And we've got Scottsdale Mayor Lisa Borowsky. First time in, Mayor.
Welcome.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm
excited.
We've got a lot to get to, and we're going to start in Los Angeles. So we've got people getting arrested. We've got ICE raids that took place, and now we're, 6 days in? We've got a curfew in L.A. Things are a bit messy. So why don't we start with this from each of you on the panel? What image or picture comes to your mind that best captures what you think is happening in L.A.?
Wow. Who
would like to go first?
Well, I'll start as
Luis?
the DACA recipient and the immigration guy on this panel so far.
Yes, sir.
I'll just start by saying that I think the situation in LA has been completely overblown by the media.
Really?
This is not LA is on fire. This is not LA Battlefront or Battlefield, whatever the name of that movie was, where aliens were invading. This is none of that. This is everything that's happening in LA is within a quarter mile of the police station, I believe, or the sheriff's office, whatever it is. And all the pictures and everything that we're seeing streaming on TV, streaming on our social media accounts, etc., makes it seem as though the entire city of Los Angeles is on fire, and that's not the truth.
Okay.
It's not.
But we can't ignore cars being set on fire and looting. And, there are some certainly protests that are peaceful. But it seems when the lights go down and the sun goes down, it gets nasty over there, and even if it's a small part of L.A.
No,
right?
I completely agree.
You can't just ignore all that stuff.
Yeah, you asked me the image. Still, the image, what the guy standing on a burning car waving the Palestinian flag might be the. I have a feeling that Trump will be running that as ads in the midterm.
The one that popped in my head was, and it's because I'm too online, I guess.
Okay.
Was the social media, people were sharing a thing of bricks saying, like, look, these bricks were all put out here because this is a planned protest, blah, blah. And it turns out that was actually from some other country, some other time, because I'm thinking a lot about the, very deliberate exercise going on social media to make this look worse than it is.
Interesting.
Now, listen, obviously, I think that any sort of, violence in a protest shouldn't happen. We should condemn it.
Right.
But I think that in that regard, it is, when it comes to the scale of it, it's overblown. I'm thinking about a lot of that misinformation.
Mayor, do you think this thing is overblown in L.A.?
No, I think it's very serious. And you asked what's the
image in your mind?
Cornerstone image of what's going on. Just the smoke plumes, the toxic smoke plumes that are going up over these cars that are getting set on fire. I mean,
they were the electric cars specifically,
yeah,
right? Waymos and whatever. Yeah.
I think that's very, very sad. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the environment in California. Who would do that? I mean, that's just complete, disaster. So I think it's very, very sad. And of course, media is going to go to that because that's a very big deal. It poses huge risk to the members of the community and the city itself.
We're inside the war room. What do you guys think of some of these protests? And Bruce, I think you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
Anti-Trump protests?
Yeah, well, that was my question. Are these about immigration anymore? Or is this just anti-Trump, anti-government at this point? I feel like when I'm looking at New York and Chicago and other cities, Dallas, it feels like they're morphing into something. It's more than just immigration. Am I reading it wrong?
No, I think there's two things that are happening here, and I think it does lead to this morphing into it. One thing is that in Southern California, there are people who, because of the Marines coming in and because of the sort of military presence, they feel like it's their civic obligation. They're, as patriotic Americans want to defend the Constitution, to go and protest. And so there are more people who
even if immigration wasn't their hot button issue or whatever.
There are more people that are showing up because, immigration against Trump, that's one thing. Two, as the president plans his big waste of money military parade that he's about to do on his birthday, there are concurrent protests planned around the country that have been planned for months.
On that day.
Right. And
this Saturday.
Right-wing influencers on social media are pretending like these are planned riots to build off of this thing. And so I think that you're seeing the activity start to really ramp up, these two things coming together. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of focus on it.
I keep looking. Go ahead, Mayor. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, my opinion is it's a confluence between frustration, right, of just what's going on politically,
Right.
potentially, especially in LA. There's been so much going on there, right, over the last 6 months, what they've had to deal with. And, between that and those things are contagious, too. So when you start talking about peaceful protests that then turn, take
Violent.
a turn for the
Yeah.
worst, right? Then that's all the social media, and it's a business for people too. I mean, these protests, there's volunteer signups. They pay people to go out,
Right.
So it's a thing, right?
I would
And-
love to meet one person who's paid to go to a protest.
You don't think
I've been
it
doing
happens?
this for over 20 years.
Okay.
And I have not had the
I would
opportunity
go,
to meet
who wants
somebody
to pay
who's
me?
done it
I'll go
yet.
wherever you want.
Because I would
free.
love to be paid to go to a protest. If somebody can give me checks, there are organizations that go to provide support. They go there and they're sort of handing out water. They're making sure things are safe. Those organizations, you want organizations like that in a protest because their job is to de-escalate, to try and make sure things stay calm. But I just don't know where this very common notion that there's this big horde of paid protesters. I just don't know where that's coming from.
No, I mean, I agree with Tony on that one. I don't think George Soros is paying everybody off the street to go protest. But I do think that when you talk about the core issue at the end of the day, I think that the core message that the people are trying to get across is that this immigration issue is still top of mind and the thing that people care most about. It's unfortunate that these protests and these activations against what's essentially a broken immigration system are being co-opted by members of the general community. I don't know which party they belong to, but I'm assuming they're probably Democrats in some cases, who are deciding to turn these into anti-Trump protests and are taking it way too far by, again, setting, stuff on fire and whatnot.
That's Luis Acosta. We've got the mayor of Scottsdale, Lisa Borowsky. We've also got Tony Cani, Democratic strategist. Trump's winning this thing, right? I mean, America's looking at this. And, at the beginning, I looked at this and said, okay, I don't know why you're starting at a Home Depot. I don't think there's necessarily a criminal there. I think that's kind of a waste. But then, you do see the images and then you get sucked into it. And they're like, hold on a second. There are all these people that are going after cops. And we had something in Peoria. We're talking about that.
I think it's fair to say that most people are not engaged maybe to the level that we are, and they just see clips or they see something on Facebook or they see Instagram or they catch them.
That's how it goes.
No, I agree. And
Right.
so they see the most extreme example of whatever's going on.
I get to the point where it's like, okay, I guess Trump called in the California National Guard. I really think that was, the right thing to do. But I'm to the point where I'm like, okay, clean them out. Get rid of the rioters. I'm tired of this. And, I think people are looking at Donald Trump and saying, yeah, okay, go ahead and do your thing.
I think that there are probably people who, because of what they're seeing, really want this to get cleaned up, want to make sure people are safe, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I think where Trump is going to run into problems is with the Marine deployment. There is consistent, constant data and polling that Americans do not want military to be
Marines on the
ground
streets of their cities.
doing these kinds of things. I think that was, I think that in that regard, that was a really big
But
mistake.
I don't hear
a
that
big
many people
escalation.
talking about that now.
I think
And
it's in the
maybe
news
it's a
lot
good
that
thing,
the
but maybe
Marines
it's a
are
good
there.
thing because the Marines aren't, I don't see Marines involved. Maybe that's a
Right.
good reason. There isn't tanks in downtown LA.
Mayor, if the Marines were to show up in Scottsdale because there was unrest, how are you feeling about that as the leader of the city?
I mean, it depends. Obviously, there's a lot going on in LA, and we would need, if it's a federal mandate, we would need to defer to that. Our job in Scottsdale, and I feel like we're very much prepared for upcoming, demonstrations, peaceful protests, and what could come. But our job and our PD's job would be to protect the citizens and people in our community, and that would mean, diffuse the situation and whatever backup resources we have. I mean, you just can't let it spiral out of control, right? What do you do? And I think there's a sense there, and hopefully that's not the sense about Scottsdale, that there's not going to be a forceful response, meaning to protect the citizens and the community.
Okay.
All right, last one for this segment.
Ooh.
Is Trump at war with blue states? He's doing this in L.A. He's got what they're calling ICE is preparing a full assault on 5 other Democratic cities. Is he picking on the blue states, or are the blue states the ones that are housing a lot of illegal immigrants?
This is all. It's theater in that regard. He governs by theater. He governs by showmanship, and he's doing this. Like he's not going in any cities in Texas where there's Democrat mayors that are right. Like he wants to go in to tap into the preconceived notions of people in his base about what a terrible place LA is and all this kind of stuff.
Right,
And
what a hellhole California.
And so I think that is part of the problem. And I really appreciate the mayor saying like one of the jobs of like law enforcement in the city is to sort of like calm things down, de-escalate. But that doesn't seem to be what Trump's priority is. Trump's priority is to inflame and to sort of really make a spectacle of this. And I think that's why this is getting to the point it is. It's that he's really helping this spin out of control.
Well, but again, I think the protesters, in many cases, especially the ones that are there to commit crimes, are playing right into his hands.
Sure.
I
totally agree.
Giving him exactly what he wants, right?
I agree with that. Yeah.
But
I
it's
mean,
also,
if you're going to say it's theater, it could be theater, could be easily viewed as theater on both sides, right?
Sure.
Trying to make
Well, I mean,
Oh,
protesting.
Gavin Newsom
protesting
is playing a role in this as
Right.
well, right?
Yeah, protesting is by its very nature, it's a theatrical thing. It's when you're going there and you're putting your body on the line to say, these are my rights.
All right.
The big news coming out of Scottsdale, at least from our perspective, Mayor, and you could tell us difference, I suppose, is it was an interesting headline. Is that a fair way to put it? That we had a couple days. Axon cuts off negotiations with Scottsdale following meeting with mayor. We're like, what the heck just went on? It was a provocative headline. I think it's fair to say that maybe the headline wasn't entirely accurate. I think that's a fair thing.
So before we get the mayor's...
Those two things were not related. I'll just leave it
fair
at
enough,
that.
fair enough.
And I think the way it played on the first, when they first released that, they revised it.
Fair enough,
Because
okay.
that was not the case.
I hear you.
So Axon President Josh Isner joined us. So let's play a clip, and then Mayor will have you react. Take a listen.
Yeah, ultimately, we went to the city about 3 weeks ago, and we said, look, we're willing to give back some of what the state law allows us to do in the interest of being good neighbors. And part of that was solving a few problems for the neighboring HOA that we had committed to in our zoning agreement. Part of it was exploring a joint development of a performing arts center on our campus with the city. And part of it was we offered to give the city, we offered to cap our apartment build at $850 instead of $1,900. So we were going to give them 1,000 apartments back in the interest of just moving forward as partners. And because of 3 city council members, there aren't going to be 1,000 less apartments in Scottsdale now.
All right, Mayor, what were the 3 city council members doing in this negotiation? It sounded like, to me, Axon's like, hey, we're going to give you some stuff back. And the city council's like, no, we don't need that. Why did it go that way? Why did it go down this way?
So I've done commercial litigation for 27 years, been in the courtroom my entire career. So, when warring parties, I'll use that.
Okay.
Not that we're warring,
Fair
but
enough.
even the most,
Adversarial at times.
Yes,
yeah.
even the most significantly adversarial conflicts have a resolution point. So I've maintained from the get-go that there is a middle ground, and maybe not right in the middle, but there's a middle ground that can be accomplished with Axon and the city, meaning including the residents, including, the council, including what's best for our community. And I will tell you that I've maintained that, and we've met a couple of times, several times actually, and I've found them to be of that same mindset, which I really appreciate. And I think that, left to our own devices, right, we could accomplish a great result. But again, we talked about this on the break. The legislation is what really haunts me, because that's a footprint that we're going to be, that's going to remain even if an agreement was obtained.
And this was a piece of legislation that allowed them to move forward with their plan. And for time alone, that kind of did an end around the Scottsdale city government. Is that fair?
That's the goal of the legislation, to take the city out of a decision.
Out of the decision. Yeah. Yeah.
But it sounded like Axon wanted to say to you, listen, we don't need to talk, but we're going to give you some of the things you want back. And then the Scottsdale City Council said no. Why would they say no? Why wouldn't they take some of the stuff back and get a better deal?
I can assure you, I speak for no one on the city council but myself.
You didn't like what they did, right?
Well, I don't even know what you're referring to, what they did, but what.
Well, we'll give you 1,000 apartments back. No, we don't need that. Well, we wanted 1,000 apartments back.
For the record, these were discussions that I had with Axon, so they were not necessarily communicated to widespread on the council.
Okay.
And I did not talk to any of them about these terms. In fairness, I wanted to see where we could go just with our discussion, and we went pretty far. I thought we it came up with some great deal points that I can live with. And he talked about the details of which, and I don't know how many apartments he just said, but we had a little even better deal than that, honestly. And it was the phasing and the terms of the phasing that was a stopping point. Not that we couldn't have overcome it, but I think they just in the end saw, I'm just speaking
your impression,
suspicion of what they could have been had enough of. They just, I don't know that they wanted to have to go back through the council.
Gotcha.
And, rely on agreements. And so, I never say never. I don't think we're done still.
Okay.
I really don't, because I think there's opportunity here. And, the issue really is 1,000 less apartments, but I think certain people on the council see it as, and I could be one of those, the legal argument that law may be unconstitutional.
Gotcha.
Okay. So there's that. So there's a lot of moving parts.
All right.
It can't be reduced into one. This was the problem.
Gotcha.
Far from easy.
One thing I think that's interesting is a big part of the reason this passed in the legislature is because Democrats wanted the housing stock because they were worried about affordable housing. And so Axon is now using that
Kind of
law
that-
as leverage, but saying, but we're going to do less housing.
No,
So it's a very interesting
There's always more than
negotiation.
one thing, all right? Always more.
Okay, is Arizona ready for clashes between ICE and activists? We saw what happened in Peoria yesterday.
Yes.
Homeland Security was serving a drug-related warrant in Peoria, and protesters mistook it for ICE.
And they've been following. Apparently, they're following the vehicles, and they have spotters.
We had the mayor of Peoria, Jason Beck, on. You're ticked off.
I'll tell you what. You come to my city and try to touch one of our police officers.
Yeah.
And I'm more pissed right now than I can express.
We had Governor Katie Hobbs on yesterday. She says Beck has every right to be angry. So what are we going to see here in the Valley? What is it going to look like? Because you know that ICE is going to be here doing raids. They're going to do raids in all type of cities. Are we going to see mayhem like we were seeing in L.A.? Who wants to start? Luis, why don't you start?
I'll just jump in here and say
Please.
that I do not think that there will be the same level of mayhem that there are in places like LA or Chicago, just given
New York,
just given the
Why
different
not?
populations.
Yeah,
right?
why not?
Those communities are, I think, in my opinion, have a larger component of folks who are Latino and Democrat, and I think that, as we talked about earlier on the show, they're taking these opportunities for peaceful protests, and these peaceful protests are being co-opted into other movements, right? I think that Arizona specifically, and the organizations that have done a lot of work here locally, have done a great job in educating the folks that go out there and do protests, and have shown them or taught them how to actively engage respectfully and peacefully.
Luis, I have a question for you, and maybe you can help me understand. I know first generation, second generation, third generation Latino is part of the issue, and we just know this from numbers. I think Trump won like Latino men by 54% or something. There are a lot of, I'm guessing, second, third generation Latinos who agree with him on immigration. Maybe not so many as in LA. Because the populations are different.
Yeah, I'll say that, at least from my perspective, when you talk about the Latino culture, and specifically, I can only give the perspective on the Mexican culture, we're traditionally a very conservative, very conservative people, very Catholic, very, very matriarchal, and we go to church and we do the thing, and I think that a lot of Latinos, Mexicans specifically, if it weren't for the immigration issue, would probably be Republican, and I'll just say it that way. Now, when I think about Latino men, a lot of them are machistas, and that's the word that we use when you're the man of the household and you're the one that controls everything, and that's just a cultural thing. And I do think that a lot of Latino men probably saw that Trump was a lot stronger in a lot of the issues that they cared about as opposed to Kamala Harris.
Fair enough. Okay.
So when we're talking about possible raids in the valley,
Which are going to happen. They're not possible. They're going to happen, right?
that's why they're possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could certainly be here. Mayor, let me ask you this, because are we going after just someone who is here illegally that doesn't have a record, or are we going after criminals? Would you support ICE coming into Scottsdale and arresting day laborers who are here illegally at Home Depot specifically? Because that's what happened in L.A. Are you for that?
So our job in Scottsdale and our public safety is to enforce the law, right?
Right.
And federal law, if they're coming into our community, our city, and making arrests or doing what their job is, it's on us to, again, getting back to diffusing the situation, protecting the community, and making sure that these processes are calm and nonviolent. And so that's, I know, talking to our chief of police, we're prepared. We're prepared. We're in dialogue with these organizations, and we'll, be prepared if and when that comes.
Mayor, does Scottsdale have and I don't know the exact number, I'll get a cooperation agreement with ICE? Do you work with them? Like some law enforcement in cities do.
Well, we have communication with them.
Okay.
I can't tell you exactly what.
Fair enough. I think it's like called an 87G or something like that, where
there's nothing formal
Nothing
as far as I
formal.
know, but I may not know that. I wouldn't know that.
Okay.
Potentially, and but there are open lines of communication, and we won't be caught off guard. And I think there's that reciprocity, if you will, just from a respectful perspective. I think that does create a level of trust that you don't need to do a surprise attack on a community. I think that's bad form. I think that's really that's hard, right?
I think things have changed. I think at the beginning, I was certainly somebody who thought, okay, Trump said he's going after the bad ones. Let's get the bad ones out. Nobody's arguing that.
The criminals, the rapists, the absolutely.
Whoever has committed one of those crimes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It has changed. So now they're at Home Depot. They were at a church the other day. So I want to direct this question to Luis Acosta. You're a DACA recipient. You've got some protections. But what is it like to live in the Trump era?
Well,
because especially after the last 6 or 7 days.
I mean, do I really have protections? That's
I don't know.
Well, I guess that was going to be my question.
when-
How confident do you feel in DACA protections?
Not very. I mean, if I'm at Scottsdale Fashion Square and I'm shopping at Lululemon and I'm speaking without an accent and I go outside and, I just so happen to have the brownest skin out of all the shoppers there and ICE is there and they pick me up. Well, I've seen the videos of them just throwing people randomly into the back of a van and it speeds off and next thing you know, they're on an airplane to Mexico because their due process has been violated. I mean, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution has just been completely thrown out the window. And so we're in a situation now where this administration just does not care about people's day in court. And instead of focusing on the rapists, instead of focusing on the drug dealers, the people smuggling, the people breaking every single major law, they're focusing on people who, are, for lack of a better term, out there trying to make an honest living, paying taxes, and trying to contribute meaningfully to society. And
or
it's
even
just
some people
not right.
that are legally here and they're
Yeah.
going through the legal process as they were told to do. I mean, it feels almost like they've got a quota. I mean, you've heard some news stories about the fact that they
there
want to have
is
a
a quota.
certain number of deportations
And low-hanging fruit.
And
Was
it's like,
it-
well, we got to get those numbers up. And
Is
that's
it
just
3,000?
3,000.
And and like when it comes to protecting, the community, like these people are in our community. These are human beings.
Yeah.
And they have due process rights. And if they want to change the Constitution, go try and change the Constitution. But right now, the Constitution supports them.
So I'm old enough to remember when Donald Trump and Elon Musk were fighting. Okay? It was,
It was
public.
awesome. It was awesome.
It was
Big fight field.
Well, I would say it was nasty, but it was nasty on Elon's part. Donald Trump, for the first time in recorded history, was measured and didn't punch back as hard as Elon was punching at him.
I think he called him a drug addict.
Okay, who hasn't at this point? But
That actually might be fact.
Elon,
I think, yeah. Right.
Elon has apologized. Elon today said, I might have gone a bit far.
I think when you call somebody a pedophile,
Okay, I'm just saying.
and you can't prove it, that's probably going too far.
He went a bit far.
Yeah.
Are they going to come back together again? What is going on with this bizarre relationship? And by the way, Pride Month. They had to break up during Pride Month, too?
There's a
That's
big-
really...
That was my
sad.
joke.
That's
You
sad.
took my joke from a week ago, Bruce.
There's a big history of Trump having falling out with people and then pardoning them for the crimes that they committed on his behalf. So you can see a lot of people banning, Michael Flynn. But the difference is that those people didn't really punch back. And so I wonder whether or not these attacks by Elon is just too much. And Elon, he regrets the breakup, I guess.
Didn't you say Elon might know some things that
I
Trump
think-
doesn't want him to?
I think he does. I think Elon does know some stuff, and I think Trump knows it. I'm not saying Trump's on the Epstein list. I don't know. I would doubt it. I don't think he is, because why wouldn't Joe Biden put that out there if he was on the Epstein list? That's the first thing I'd do if I was Joe Biden. Hey, that guy, he was on the island. And Joe Biden didn't do that. So I don't think Trump is on the Epstein list. But I think that Trump knows that he's going to possibly need Elon down the line because it's all about money. Right, Mayor?
So they're both type A. Can we agree on that,
Fair,
right?
fair.
They're overachievers,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
And that happens, right? Especially with men, dare I say.
Absolutely.
One of the most heated 2-week jury trials I ever had was between two former partners
Alpha
that were
males, huh?
warring, right? Yeah, and they were gangsters in their mind, and very, they could have killed each other. I mean,
Sure.
not really, but maybe. The jury came back with a goose eggs really all the way around, counterclaims going back and forth. And you poll the jurors, to see what they thought about these two people, who they liked the least. And one of the jurors said, we were going to include on the jury verdict form couples therapy, that they be required to go to an island together and have it out.
I think there's 300 to 400 million reasons why
Yeah.
Trump wants to get along with Elon.
Yeah, I think so too.
Right?
I mean, if you do look at it, Elon did not come out of this smelling like roses.
Oh no.
He didn't. And so, like, even over the last few weeks, it looks like Trump has gotten the nod politically, and people looking at the situation over Elon. I think a lot of people were in Trump's corner and said Elon went too far. And then we saw what happened in L.A., and people were like, well, I'm seeing people burn cars. I think I'm going to side with Trump. Trump hasn't had that bad a couple of weeks.
No, he's
at all.
Yeah.
With public opinion.
Well,
right?
there was a poll that came out just today that was very bad for him. The Quinnipiac poll that showed that his big beautiful bill was like hugely
People don't
underwater.
like the bill.
His numbers are down.
Well,
We'll
we're
see
not
what happens
talking
next.
about tariffs.
No.
The bill.
No.
Or ending wars. All things he's failing on.
And he's winning on
We're
immigration.
winning on immigration. He wants to talk about immigration.
Yeah,
that's,
one
that's his
block in
winning
LA.
thing. Yeah, the one block in LA. Yeah. Guy, thank you all, seriously, for being in the war room today. We sincerely appreciate it. Tony, Lisa, Luis, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very
was fun.
much.
Thanks for watching Outspoken with Bruce and Gaydos. Tap to watch more from KTAR News and click the button in the middle to subscribe.